Greetings, art students. Miss Russ here, and we are diving into painting level F. This is a big one. We get to learn how to make brown paint consistently and accurately every time, as well as some tricks to make your painting really pop, which includes painting in levels. Let's dive down and take a look at what we're learning. So on your level sheet, you can get in there and read. You're going to mix the brown paint without help. We're also going to be adding shadows to your painting. And I talked about how we're going to be painting in levels. We're also going to feel very successful at the act of painting. And we're going to have crisp colors in the foreground and grayed out colors in the background. Okay, so we're going to do something different. And that is we are going to go back to our sketchbook page that we completed for level E. And you are going to add to this that this is also your level F. Now, if you really despise whatever you got painted here, you are welcome to paint something different, but because we are talking about levels, it is better to go ahead and take something, even if you don't like it, and let's use this to learn and extend our knowledge. Okay, so, Miss Ross just set her level sheet down in her paint. First, we're going to dive into how do I make brown paint. Okay, well, essentially, brown paint is made from turquoise, magenta, and yellow. And brown paint consists of taking two complementary colors. So if I go in and mix these two together and I make purple, okay, so I have a nice crisp purple, then I'm going to take small amounts of that purple and I'm going to slowly add it to my yellow. And you can see that as I add, I am getting a brown. I have a light brown right now, and then if I wanted to keep adding the purple, I can have a dark brown. Now, theoretically, if I mixed both of these all together, I would consistently get some sort of brown, but it's not always that easy. So I recommend doing what I'm doing, which is working in small batches. So I could take a little bit more purple and then pull in a little bit more yellow, and I just slowly mix. I kind of like as a swirl, bring everything in until I fully have my color. Okay, another option is to start with green. And it's one of those things where some people just find it easier starting with one base color. Now the opposite of green, once I get my green. Now the advantage of this method is that I tend to be able to mix faster. So if I start with green, because the whole thing is kind of green, so you'll see here. And then I'm going to slowly add my magenta, and again I'm going to work in small little batches, and as I pull the brown, there I'm getting a brown, then I could just slowly keep going. One mistake that students make, oh Miss Russ, you're kind of getting obsessed with turning this all to brown. Brown, 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 brown. I added too magenta too quick. And so this is a very good lesson. Don't dive in too deep in the pool. You might drown. There, my brown comes back. Okay, now don't forget, these browns that you get, you can always add a teeny bit of black or a teeny bit of white if they feel too light or too dark. Okay, one mistake that students make is theoretically, if you have one dot turquoise, which I happen to stick my paper in, you have one dot magenta, and then you have 4 or 5 dots worth of yellow. You should be able to slide all of this together and get brown. But we're going to find out if what I say is true. So mix. Okay. When you do this, you can get something that looks close to brown. Do you see how that looks close to brown? But the problem is that because I mixed all of these together, it takes a really experienced eye to look at this and say, oh, that's too orange. The opposite of orange is blue, so I need to add more turquoise to turn this to a brown. Now there'll be a posted color wheel in the classroom, but really you have so much more control. Oh, let's see if we can get my brown. Now see, I look at that and I see too much, it's almost like a bluish purple. So I think I need a little bit more magenta. Let's see if I can get it. Oh, there it goes. Now we're going to brown. The benefit of these two ways is that you always know what you need to add more of. If it looks too yellow, I know my only option is to add more purple. If it looks too purple, I know my only option is to add more yellow. Same here. I can only go one or the other. But if I try and do all three, it means that all three could be an option. And even I, the art teacher, had to take some time here before I fully pulled to a brown. Okay, then, now that and go ahead and take your time. Do the 3 dots just like I would. Be willing to waste an entire palette worth of paint until you're able to successfully make browns. This is just the way it is. You might have to clean this sucker off a couple of times until you find you're consistently making brown paints. Okay, the next thing on our list is add shadow. So we're going to go ahead and take our, Miss Rose is running slow. Okay, so if I wanted to add a shadow, like this tree, right, would cast a shadow. So what I want to do is I want to take the paint that I used when I was making the ground, and then to make a shadow, I just want to add some of that brown to it. And then the teeniest dot of black. To darken colors, I normally go with a brown first and then a tiny dot of black. This then would allow me to make a shadow of this tree on this ground. And then I could do the same thing by adding a shadow, because if the sun's coming this way, it means that a shadow is going to go there, right? It means that there's going to be a teeny house shadow right there. So you want to experiment with going ahead and adding shadows. Then after being able to add shadows, you need to remember that you want to paint in levels. So when we look at this painting, theoretically I should have painted the sky first, and then the mountains, and then the tree top, and then the house, and then I could do the grass that would come before this, and then the sky, right? Well, let's look at why that's important. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in the bark of my tree. And you can see when you look close that I went over the lines a little bit. So I'm going to go in with my brown. And then because everything is dry, I can go right in and I can make the line out of paint. Now I'm purposely kind of shaking my hand because trees, they're kind of organic. They don't have a clean, crisp line. So I get a better result by kind of shaking my hand and letting the tree be and act like a tree. And you can see that this is letting me go over top of the color that was underneath with what I think it should look like. I don't have to worry about how pretty all the lines I painted were because I can always cover up whatever came first. Okay, next, after we know, so if I were to keep painting in layers, let's look at it. Let's pretend that house was already painted. Well, I would probably want to do the whites of the eye, and then I would do the color of the eye. And same with the face. The face would come last. Okay. The other thing this lets you do is you're going to notice we have a lot of different brushes available and in different sizes. Make sure you're always finding the right brush for the job. For example, what if my little guy here needs more details? I'm going to get out my fan brush and I want to go over him and add some textures. This last little tidbit is what really makes your art pop. Now theoretically, because I'm adding these, all of this inside mouth and stuff should already be painted. But this is where you want to go to Creativity Town. Most people, when they paint, they stop too soon. And all of the joy and life in their painting comes from adding layer upon layer upon layer. And so you can already see how much more interesting he is on that side than on this side. Same is true for this grass. If I want this grass to really pop, I'm going to load up my brush with a little bit of the white and a little bit of the green, and then look, I'm going to make that texture that grass would have, and I'm going to purposely kind of like let it go. Maybe I even come in here with my brush. I'm going to double load my brush so it's not carefully mixed. Maybe I pull some stuff right here near the road. Maybe this all goes like that, right? And so I could add texture. Now I wouldn't want to go all the way because my eye would stop being able to see it. But right here next to the edge, maybe what I need is just a little bit of texture. And again, look how much more interesting this side of my painting is becoming than that side. Well, the shadow looks pretty good, but this side over here. Okay, so that gets us through how to successfully paint your painting and then having crisp colors in the foreground. So this is the last little component that connects right to that. So this is where you're going to take little dots of white on a teeny tiny amount of brush, and you're going to want to make sure that you go in and you add highlights. So if the sun's hitting from this side, this guy might have a little bit of a white line along there. Right? He's in my foreground, so I want him to really pop. So I'm making that tiny, teeny line that's not too obvious. And then look, because he's in my foreground, this side would be darker because he would have a shadow on the other side. So I'm going to make this side dark. So you want to go ahead and do different things like that. In fact, I can even go in with a little bit of my color. And look, I can wash this out a little bit so it fades nicely and creates a three-dimensional look. The more you paint and add these details, the more and more realistic your painting will become. With that, happy art creating. Enjoy this process and know that you probably need a smaller piece of paper rather than a larger one so that you have time to truly build those layers of paint where you're adding more and more details to things in the foreground. Happy art creating. Bye.